In Unit 9 we'll be discussing qualitative data collection and particularly the use of interviews and focus groups to collect qualitative data, because these are the most common forms of qualitative data collection for Masters and MBA research projects. The session objectives are to understand the strengths and weaknesses of qualitative data and to understand the different common methods of collecting qualitative data. Qualitative data is data in the form of words, and because different words can mean similar things, or even the same words can mean different things depending on the context, the data is non-standardized, and it requires classification into categories or themes. Analysis is conducted through conceptual interpretations, whereby the researcher needs to try and interpret what the respondent is trying to say through the words they choose. There are numerous qualitative data collection methods. These involve both the collection of primary data and secondary data. Interviews and focus groups are the most common form of primary qualitative data collection methods. We will be discussing interviews and focus groups in more detail in the next video as part of this unit. Interviews allow the researcher to ask a series of questions and then follow up using prompts to gain an in-depth understanding of the respondent's views, whereas focus groups allow discussion within a group which is facilitated by the researcher. Ethnography is another primary data collection method whereby the researcher watches and views what the respondents or subjects are doing. So normally they will not actually go and probe and ask the respondent any questions, but they will sit back and watch what they're doing and take notes about what is happening. In a business setting, this might be watching how a group of individuals work and how they interact while taking notes. Ethnography is another form of data collection methods, which is becoming increasingly common, whereby the researcher views and watches what individuals or a group of individuals are doing on the internet. So this might be following social media posts or social media interactions to see what the group of individuals are saying and how they're interacting with one another. Another qualitative data collection method is the collection of reflective logs, whereby the group of individuals being researched are asked to write logs reflecting on what they've done, and then at the end of a period of time the researcher collects these reflective logs and then analyses the logs. We mentioned in the unit before about open-ended questionnaires, and qualitative data can be collected through open-ended questionnaires, but there are numerous limitations to this, such as removing the respondent from the natural environment and the inability to probe, which other qualitative data collection methods allow. When it comes to secondary qualitative data collection methods, the use of company documents to look for keywords and language and what a company is doing is a common method. Also, the collection and analysis of public documents in a similar vein is another possible qualitative data collection method. There are ethical considerations in qualitative research. Due to the much closer involvement with the participants, particularly in interviews or focus groups, there is a danger that the researcher could ask questions which could unsettle difficult information for the respondent. And indeed, probing and discussion is common, and this could allow the respondent to bring up information they might not be comfortable sharing. This means confidentiality is important, but it can be difficult in qualitative research because of the high level of contextualization within the data. So if we are interviewing people within a certain company, we might be able to tell who these people are by the level or comments that these people are sharing with us. It's also important that the researcher makes all the information anonymous due to the depth of the study. There are criticisms of qualitative research. These include that it can be too subjective, and qualitative findings rely too much on the researcher's own, often unsystematic views about what is significant and what is not significant. There are also problems regarding generalization, where the scope of the findings is restricted due to the sample size and the lack of a representative sample. This means it might not be possible to generalize findings in one business to another business because it's highly contextualized. So some critics will say, what is the purpose of conducting a piece of research which doesn't really give us any findings we can use for other businesses? Qualitative research can also be difficult to replicate due to its unstructured nature. And since there are hardly any standardized procedures to follow in qualitative research, it means that other researchers might not be able to replicate our research and might not even come to the same findings that you might within your research. There's a lack of transparency with some qualitative research too, as to how the researcher came to the findings they did. And if this is the case, it means that the reader might not necessarily agree with your findings and might not know how you got to your findings, so therefore they cannot conclude whether they believe the same outcome of your research and findings that you do. So in conclusion, qualitative data allows greater depth and strong contextualization of results in a particular context. However, it's not without criticisms, particularly around generalizability and the lack of transparency. Also, ethical consideration is particularly important for qualitative research, and it's important to try and ensure, where feasible, both confidentiality and anonymity, and it's important to think early about how this can be built into the research. Due to the highly particular and contextualised nature of qualitative research, it could potentially be possible for readers of the research to work out who the respondents are, and therefore the information they deliver could be sensitive.